Will England ever forgive Mason Greenwood? If you ask me, the chances of that happening is slim to none, and those chances further dropped when Jude Bellingham had some unkind words for Mason Greenwood, and that's according to the headline reports after the game against Real Madrid and Getafe, to which La Liga would launch an investigation that was quickly shut down because of Mason Greenwood's request. But recently, it turns out not all of England's current top players hate Mason Greenwood, hence he was spotted training with Kobbie Mainoo and James Conor, players who know him personally from his time at Man United's academy, when he was a prospect that got Alex Ferguson's approval to become a superstar, which was a spot-on prediction. Hence, Mason Greenwood is the youngest player in the top 10 Golden Boot race with 21 goals this past season. But unfortunately for him, what happened in 2023 has left him semi-blackballed, to which I fully blame it on him, but for the most part I blame it on the adults that were involved in the situation, because how society works is that when someone gets away with punishment in front of the public's eye, that only angers people to the point where they may even take laws into their own hands. For an example, let's take Chris Brown. The case might be different but similar to an extent. In 2009, the singer was all over the news for a violent incident that involved global R&B singer Rihanna. But if you fast forward to 2025, Chris Brown is out here selling stadium shows internationally, and one could argue that he won back society's hearts. And even Jude Bellingham was spotted in one of his concerts in 2023. But for Chris Brown, there was a period of time which was full of regret, including millions of public apologies that went with numerous hours of community hard labor. The transition didn't happen overnight.
Hi, I'm Chris Brown. Since February, my attorney has advised me not to speak out, even though ever since the incident I wanted to publicly express my deepest regret and accept full responsibility. I felt it was time that you heard directly from me that I am sorry.
But eventually Chris Brown would get back with Romano, and a smash hit called Nobody's Business was released straight to the top of the charts. Mason Greenwood, on the other hand, went from trending on social media with hardcore evidence of his crimes, only to get a brief court appearance that would lead to charges being dropped. Then a few months later, he pops up in Getafe with a big unveiling. Of course, Jude Bellingham would be pressured to give him some words, because you can't just skip punishment and think everything is going to be okay, because that's not how society works. Even John Flanagan, who's a former Liverpool player, had to go through rehabilitation processes and do 40 hours of community service. This is after he assaulted his girlfriend in a nightclub. The way Man United shielded Mason Greenwood from punishment is the sole reason his career is still haunted by the mistake, because I still say if he accepted punishment and dealt with the consequences, the situation would have been long behind him at this point of his career. As a disclaimer, I want to say I'm totally against harming women and children, but now that there is a child involved with the same woman Mason Greenwood was causing harm, I think Mason Greenwood should actually take his career into his own hands and give an open interview about his regrets, because he's not a young teenage player anymore. He's a provider for his family, and because football is a short career, he needs to prioritize maximizing profits, because I honestly believe if he ever was genuinely apologetic, there would be some part of the national team coaching staff that would actually consider giving him a call-up, because judging from the recent England results against Andorra and Senegal, their hopes of winning the 2026 World Cup don't seem promising. And the funny part is, if you take goals from Bukayo, Saka, Foden and Noni from this past season and sum them up, they still don't amount to Mason Greenwood's 21 goals from League One. And Man United and his football agents are the ones to blame for turning a blind eye to the behavior that could have been checked a long time ago, starting from the COVID-19 scandal when Mason Greenwood invited 2 girls for some fun in his first camp with the England squad. He would eventually be caught on camera with Foden and get kicked out of the tour for violating COVID-19 protocol, but Foden would be called up again a few months later after it was apparent that Mason was the mastermind between the two, even though he was 2 years younger than Foden. And Man United would not suspend the teenager or even show any source of tough love. Instead, Mason Greenwood would be forced to pay a fine of just £1,300 and ask one of his lawyers to write down a small paragraph as an apologetic gesture. And that, in my opinion, was the major problem. It's never a good thing to allow an 18-year-old to just pay his way out of trouble, because that behavior was allegedly repeated again when his 2023 charges were suddenly dropped, even though everybody had seen the viral evidence that was posted by his girlfriend. But the straw that broke the camel's back was the investigations that was conducted by Man United, only for the club to be split in the middle on which way they were going to take forward, as as a result, Man United executives were leaning towards bringing back Mason until the sponsors intervened for fears of reputational damage, which is when Mason got told he could only return for the next following season of 2023-2024. But once the public heard that Man United was considering to bring back Mason Greenwood, it just seemed like another rich guy who's above the law, and that, in my opinion, is when Man United failed Mason Greenwood. Because not long after that, the women's team wanted to protest along with the female employees at the club headquarters. After all, Mason Greenwood was still getting jersey sales of 275,000 and a weekly wage of £75,000 without any punishment for a case that was on public display. And in my opinion, Man United was scared to lose some serious talent that was borderline generational. I mean, Mason Greenwood used to take free kicks with his left foot and right foot. Some players can't even take it with their strong foot. So when Man United gave him the Ryan Giggs jersey number, there wasn't much of a shock. The talent was there on display as proof. And in today's football, there is a huge market demand for goal scorers. Because don't get it twisted, most football teams will never admit it, but they would love to sign Mason Greenwood. The same way Man United seemed like they didn't want to release him or sell him. To get the full scale of Mason Greenwood's impact, you have to look at Marseille's finishing position from the season before he joined the club. The team had only managed to accumulate a maximum of 50 points, but with the addition of Mason Greenwood, the team went from finishing number 8 to finishing 2nd. Now when you take away Mason Greenwood's goals for the entire season, that's where you get to see the full picture, because 8 wins turns into 8 draws and 2 draws turn into 2 losses, and that is a total of 18 points that he has brought to the club. Now if you minus the 18 points from the 65 points that Marseille has accumulated this past season, we get 47 points, which would leave Marseille at log position number 10, and that's a similar amount of points from the previous season before Mason Greenwood joined the team. And just to put the cherry on top, this past season Olympique Marseille has conceded more goals than the rest of the top 8 teams in Ligue 1. And I say that to say this: a good team can draw a lot of games with a perfect defense, but if you want a winning team, you need to score more goals than the opposition. There's no way around that simple fact. But more importantly, teams make loads of money when they qualify for the Champions League, and in this case Marseille is going to earn 15.6 just for qualifying for the Champions League, and any game they win they will earn 2.6 million on top of the 16.5, while also getting 48 million for finishing 2nd on the League 1 log, whereas they received only 30 million the season before Mason joined the team. And another positive for Marseille is that Mason doesn't even play international football, which leads me to the next question: could Mason Greenwood ever play for England? It's definitely not impossible in my opinion. All it begins with is an apology, but with the World Cup being less than a year away, there has been talks of him switching national teams to represent Jamaica, and based off recent history, there has been no player to switch senior national teams. Even though Jamal Musiala went from playing for England's juniors to playing for the German national team, the only thing stopping Mason Greenwood from switching nations is the fact that he played one single game for the England national team, and once you play for the seniors, you will play for them until retirement. Back in the days, players like Madrid legend Alfredo Di Stefano played for 3 national teams, which is Argentina, Colombia and Spain, but mostly due to the fact that in the 1950s UEFA wasn't even founded yet, while FIFA wasn't as powerful as they are today. The one player to come close to switching national teams is Karim Benzema, when he tried to play for the Algerian national team due to the fact that he was blackballed from the French national team in 2015 after being caught in a blackmailing scandal, where a private video of Matteo Valbuena was in possession of some thugs that were using Benzema as a mediator in the ransom negotiations. The whole time the case was ongoing, Benzema would try to use his lawyer connections to switch national teams, hence he was frozen for more than 5 years away from national team football. But the French national team would only invite Benzema back only after the Madrid striker had won the 2022 Ballon d'Or, only for Benzema to be found guilty a few months later after his comeback to the national team, and that was the last time a senior player had been so close to switching nations. But for Greenwood, the only national teams which would allow him back is the Basque national team and the Catalonian national team, both of which are not recognized by FIFA and UEFA, and as a result, these national teams can only play friendly games, and currently they have some good players on the rosters, whether it's Eric Garcia, Pau Victor who play for Barcelona, or captain Ariel Romano who is also part of the Catalonian national team football team, while the Basque players are usually players that are coming from Atletico Bilbao. Now it's time to turn the question back to you. Do you think Mason Greenwood should be forgiven and allowed back in the national team? What do you think he should do in order to be forgiven? Till next time, peace.